Video games. The Nervous Games of 2025 Spectacular. Folks, it's 2025, and they still suck. What a state we found ourselves in, that Keita Takahashi may have to bow out of game development, and John freaking Romero can't find a publisher. I think it's important that we continue to draw attention to layoffs, mismanagement, justice, and downright boneheadedness, but I fear I'm starting to sound like a broken record each year. C-suite executives and venture capitalists can eat a fart. That goes double for all the studio heads who've been throwing their teams under the bus by embracing generative AI this year. They can get bent, and any studio who uses the plagiarism machine to do concept art can also get bent. Hino Akihiro of Level 5 claims that 90% of coding is performed by AI now, which is definitely not true, but if that's what's happening at Level 5, maybe that explains why their games keep getting multi-year delays. Kaneko Kazuma lived long enough to become the villain, finally set free from the flower field beneath Atlas HQ to don a bad wig and make an even worse AI gacha game. Even Falcom are getting into AI, which, hey, whatever. I hated East 10, and I haven't played Dinosaur or Brandish VT yet. I imagine we're going to be seeing way more of this in the coming year, but there's few things easier than opting not to buy something, and there's already more games out there that I can play in a single lifetime. Which brings us to the bright side. It's 2025, and video games still rock. I've finished far fewer titles than I would have liked, but I can still talk about a handful of games that stuck with me this year. It may be a little unordered and a bit janky, but we can handle that, huh? I'm nervous, and these are the games of 2025. I see Clair Obscur is picking up the accolades, showing those clueless Japanese how it's done, with a fresh and exciting take on JRPGs that's never been done before. That's great. May I interest you in a Shadow Hearts or a Magna Carta Phantom of Avalanche? I've been called a contrarian, and I do my best to challenge these tendencies, but I just didn't like Clair Obscur. And not for want of trying. It's a quality game. The team did a great job, and I'm glad they're being recognized for it. It just wasn't for me. I've played Final Fantasy X. I don't really like Final Fantasy X. Besides, I was always more into Asylum Party. That's a joke for maybe one person. Please leave a comment if you liked it. I was also pretty surprised to find myself not particularly enamored with Death Stranding 2 on the beach. For all my frustrations with Kojima, I'm generally in the pocket for seeing what he's up to. I really liked the first Death Stranding, and for all its baloney, I found it to be quite meditative, zen, and surprisingly touching. Naturally, I had to pick up the sequel straight away, which turned out to be terrible timing, as we were just about to fly out to Japan for 2 weeks, leaving my precious PlayStation 5 behind. But what I did take with me was a hacked Vita with Aeon Genesis' fan-translated ROM of Super Robot Wars Gaiden, Maso Kishin, the Lord of Elemental. The first Super Robot Wars game set entirely within the original generation, that is, without any tie-ins from popular mecha anime and manga, Lord of Elemental shows us the origins of fan-favorite mecha Cybuster as we join hot-headed teen Masaki Ando, who's been isekai'd to La Gias, a magical continent that exists within the Hollow Earth. What follows is a not very well told story about kingdoms at war, tyrants being tyrannical, and super robots being worshipped as gods of light and darkness. Gundam this ain't, but I found myself charmed by Masaki's adventures and his rivalry with the nefarious Shu Shirakawa. And for a big dummy like me, I found the lightweight customization options to be more understandable and digestible than today's overtly complex and overloaded Super Robot Wars titles. The story becomes a little bit difficult to follow at the halfway mark, where a time skip occurs which expects you to be familiar with the events of about 3 or 4 preceding Super Robot Wars titles. The game poorly attempts to catch the player up with a handful of cutscenes, but these seem more geared as recaps for players who've already eaten their veggies. As a result, I wasn't quite as invested in the back half, but I still had a pretty great time. When we returned from Japan, I attempted to fire up Death Stranding 2 over the subsequent months, but every time I just couldn't shake the feeling that I'd played this game before, in 2019, and I'd had my fill then. I never thought I'd say this, but I just can't get into Death Stranding 2. Either the shine has come off this apple, or I'm depressed. And it surely can't be the latter. Oh no. What if it's both? Anyway, I hope Kojima made a lot of cool new celebrity friends when he was out visiting Riyadh on MBS's dime. Maybe he can scan Louis C.K. for Death Stranding 3. Instead, I've been playing Super Robot Wars 2 to fill in some gaps. And for all its simplicity, that's one hard-ass game.
Oh, giddy up, little buddy. It's horses.
So, look, I think we probably need to talk a little bit about Horses, which was released by Santa Ragione at the start of December. You've probably heard about this one, as Horses received a lot of press, as it was banned for sale on Steam for unclear reasons, and then subsequently banned on Epic and Humble with even less of an explanation. Inspired by Italian silent film, Horses is the story of poor little Anselmo, problem child. Here's a problem child. I can't do anything with you around, can I? Poor little Anselmo, problem child, sent off by his parents during his 20th summer to spend 2 weeks helping out on a horse ranch in hopes the hard work will build character and straighten him out. The infamous twist being the horses are all people, men and women, deemed to be promiscuous, degenerate, or political dissidents, captured by the farmer, brainwashed, and broken to be his livestock. His dog, Fido, is a man who suffered the same fate, but serves as the farmer's watchman, helping him enforce his rule. Horses is a narrative adventure game with very light mechanics. You mostly walk from A to B to see the story unfold, occasionally tasked with performing chores, like picking vegetables, feeding Fido, or hosing down the horses. Like all good fascists, the farmer's parts don't work, and he's really sore about it. On certain nights, when the alcohol gets the better of him, Anselmo witnesses him dressed as a horse himself, stripped down to a mask and a locked chastity cage, furiously rubbing his thighs as he orders Fido to do to the horses what he cannot. Eventually, Anselmo's asked to break some horses himself, and the player has no choice other than to express how Anselmo feels about it. There appears to be ample opportunity to defy the farmer, injecting him with his own syringes or branding him with his own iron, but these are not afforded as choices, something consistent with the overarching message. No matter what, Anselmo is groomed into the role of slave master, and when a chance at justice finally does arrive, it becomes apparent that these forces are bigger than what a single individual can handle. There's been a lot of capital D discourse about Horses. It's a masterpiece. It's disgusting and deserves to be banned. It's the goal of art to make us think, and Horses did make me think. It made me think that I can't believe this is the game we're having the discussion about. The final day concludes with what's essentially a Nine Inch Nails music video. Man, I did 2 tours of art school, and I've seen way more extreme media as part of each curriculum. Horses is less transgressive than an Andy Warhol short, and I hate Andy Warhol. If this game encourages players to exit their comfort zone and, say, explore the works of Pasolini or Anais Nin, well, mazel tov. But if this is the line in the sand of what's permissible, this medium truly is baby-brained. But perhaps more relevantly, Horses is less transgressive than Sayo no Uta or Fear and Hunger, just 2 of many line-steppy games deemed acceptable for sale by the very storefronts who have denied Horses the same courtesy. Yes, Steam, Epic, and Humble have the right to sell or not sell anything that they wish, but when their supposed rules and guidelines are enforced so unevenly and arbitrarily, it's clear to see that their explanations cannot be relied upon. And with Sant'Aragione announcing that the future of their studio is now in limbo due to how severely Horses' distribution has been hampered, we're seeing some very real censorship happening here, without a vagina bone in sight. Shout out to GOG for continuing to sell it. It does not escape my notice that this is an anti-fascist game that makes use of the nude body to critique power rather than to titillate the male gaze. So it's so cool that we're doing degenerate art again in 2025. Oh, look, on a completely unrelated note, every Rants game is coming to Steam in 2026. That's nice.
Vile, Exhumed.
Another game banned from multiple storefronts earlier this year, and one which I've seen receive a fraction of the press afforded to horses. Vile Exhumed by Final Girl Games and DreadXP is a short exploration of male entitlement, misogyny, and violence framed through the interface of a 90s computer. And while there's an inherent silly campiness to horses, Vile is a much harder sell. Our subject is Candy Corpse, an adult entertainer who released a handful of horror-themed videos before exiting the industry without a trace, leaving behind a fan base of weird guys to post on her fan forum. Vile sees us explore the computer of one such fan, Sean, a guy in his mid-20s with a taste for sadomsexual horror movies. Obsessed with candy and what may have happened to her, we explore his favorite websites, rental shops, and video nasty tape exchanges, searching through listings for horror classics like Abel Ferrara's Driller Killer in desperate hopes of uncovering an unknown, obscure Candy Corpse appearance. Searching through Sean's computer will eventually gain access to his messenger and his email client to learn that 2 years prior to the start of the game, he committed an extreme act of violence against a partner. A restraining order was filed, but no further charges brought, due in no small part to how poorly the police handle such cases. As we gaze deeper into the abyss, we see Sean's tastes become more and more extreme, and his appetite increasingly voracious. This is a portrait of a violent predator, yet Vile is deft and intelligent enough not to blame the movies. The tape trades are Sean's hunting grounds, and fellow video nasty aficionados his victims. The true horror of Vile comes within its final few minutes, and it's a reminder that perceived monsters are usually just people too. A fact as important as it is terrifying. Vile is a tough play, and one more relevant than ever in the wake of Twitter's AI non-consensual pornography scandal. I don't blame anybody who'd give this one a miss, but those who are up to it can find the game on DreadXP's website for pay what you want, with 50% of all proceeds going to the Red Door Family Shelter.
Milano's Odd Job Collection!
Now let's switch gears and get into something totally wholesome. 2025 was, unexpectedly, the year that saw Weston's obscure 1999 PS1 game Milano no Albaito Korekushan ported to modern platforms by Implicit Conversations and Exhumed, with a localization by Hilltop and Cargadon. I am a Weston fiend. I still think that Wonder Boy 3 The Dragon's Trap is one of the greatest games of all time, and yet somehow I'd never heard of Milano's Odd Job Collection. I was just as delighted as I was surprised to check it out. Young Milano is shipped off to her uncle's house in Zucchini Town for summer vacation, but when she arrives, she finds he's also away on a trip, leaving her to fend for herself and try adulting like a girl boss for the first time in her life. Milano's Odd Job Collection, true to its name, is a minigame collection in which you take on a handful of part-time jobs around town to keep busy and try and earn some scratch. You'll wash dishes, man the register at a fast food joint, deliver pizzas, and even cure the common cold. Damn, Milano needs a raise. My favorite is Roundabout Wrangler, where you milk these flying pig cows. Look at these gals go. At the end of each day, you return home for these cute little segments in which you can perform 2 actions per evening: feed your cat dog, do your laundry, or cook yourself a nice meal. Milano, are you cutting your spaghetti with a knife? What the hell? Once you go to bed, you can peruse the Monkey Ward catalog to give your uncle's Spartan house a makeover. But you have to be economical with how you spend your days, as you can only decorate the house on a day in which you decide not to work. There's a surprising amount of stuff to do, as you can buy a TV to watch different programs, a games console to enrich Milano's mood, plants to care for, or a musical instrument for Milano to master for a chance to make it big at the town amphitheater.
Aww.
Your summer is what you make of it, and you can finish a full playthrough in about 2 to 3 hours, although you're unlikely to see every single event on your first time through. There is an incredible amount of replay on how you'd like to shape your own Milano. Zucchini Town is the type of charmingly bizarre setting that Weston's known for, populated by all sorts of animal creatures and monsters living in harmony. It really feels like a slow-life take on Monster World. Available just about anywhere for the price of a mid-range bottle of supermarket wine, don't sleep on Milano's Odd Job collection.
Is this seat taken?
I was really charmed by Is This Seat Taken during last year's Next Fest, a cozy puzzler about the seating preferences of cute little geometric shapes. At the time, I noticed that the demo wasn't particularly challenging. While the full game throws in some additional wrinkles and curveballs, I rarely found myself scratching my head, and I ended up totally cool with that. Is This Seat Taken is, without a doubt, one of the most chill and relaxing gaming experiences I had this year, and I always felt satisfied after a session. Who wouldn't gain pleasure from figuring out where to seat the stinky guys? Sometimes you get a stinky guy who can't stand other stinky guys. People in stinky houses, I tell ya. There's an overarching story about prejudice, discrimination, and fitting in, carving out your place, perhaps, which deftly avoids being too naive and cloying. When Rhomboid Nat finally meets a movie star of the same shape, they quickly learn that not everybody has solidarity, and some are eager to just pull up the ladder behind them. This is a nice detail on a comfy puzzler that I'd recommend to just about anybody of any age. It's time to dress for success, and dress to impress.
Road to Empress I.
Road to Empress I is a lavish FMV soap opera from Hong Kong-based New One Studio. Set during the Tang Dynasty and very loosely based on the historical Empress Wu Zetian, players step into the silky shoes of Kairen Wu, a woman conscripted into the imperial palace as one of the younger members of the emperor's harem. God, I didn't know. Unfollowing the emperor now. Niece of the high-ranking consort of elegance, you'll find yourself forging alliances not only in an attempt to rise through the ranks, but also to simply keep yourself alive, as death comes fast and furious within the bounds of the palace. Set over the course of several years, alliances are forged, severed, and multiple lives are ruined, quite often by your own hand. Wu's machinations and drive to survive require that you make some pretty odious choices along the way, making bold moves, acting against instinct, and frequently throwing your closest companions under the bus.
Aw man, I should have said under the palanquin. That'd be way funnier.
It can be jarring, and quite often heartbreaking, but it wouldn't be nearly as compelling if it were any other way. My partner and I made through Kairen Wu's story over the course of several evenings during winter break, occasionally having to take a break because we were just too sad, but never for very long, as we had to see what skullduggery and tomfoolery we'd find ourselves in next. Mechanics and interactivity are at the absolute minimum here, but look at this game's production values. The sets, the costuming, the sheer number of actors, both with central roles as well as extras. I have no idea how New One are selling Road to Empress for under £10, but it seems to be working for them. Road to Empress I, true to its title, ends on a cliffhanger and a tease for a sequel, and I'll be in line for its eventual release.
Look, outside!
Man, too many people use RPG Maker derogatorily when time and time again it's proven that they should be using it celebratorily. Look Outside is a luscious, pixelated survival horror RPG set in a dank apartment building from which outside a life-changing weather phenomenon is taking place. The tenants have an inexplicable urge to look outside, but to do so will see their bodies forever changed, and perhaps the permanent loss of their humanity and sanity. Supposedly, an aid effort is on the way in 15 days, but that's a long time to stave off hunger, thirst, and insanity. Is this a COVID game? This might be a COVID game. Every day you talk to the eye peeking at you through a hole in the wall before deciding what to do. You've got a modest amount of food in the fridge, but you'll have to venture out into the communal halls in search of more supplies eventually. You're faring pretty well compared to your neighbors, some of whom are in the process of transforming into strange new life forms. In the words of Sartre, hell is other people. But people are still people, and it's up to you how much empathy you'll afford your fellow residents. You're encouraged to explore a little bit each day before returning to the safety of your apartment to save the game, rest for the night, and get up the next morning to see what strange changes have taken place within the building. There's a staggering amount of randomized events here, namely the visitors who come a knockin' if you opt to spend some time within your apartment. Honestly, Look Outside reminds me of Fear and Hunger, another RPG Maker game that I find mechanically interesting, but a little bit too repellent in content to actually enjoy. If you're of a similar mindset, Look Outside may be of interest. I just know I've seen barely a smidgen of what this game has to offer, and I'll be playing a lot of it throughout 2026.
Stray Children.
Kimura Yoshio is back, baby, with yet another follow-up to Moon. And who can blame him? Our snoopy-looking lost child, seeking the whereabouts of his parents, follows a seedy stranger and ends up isekai'd into the eroding circuits of an ancient game cartridge. Stray Children is a Moon follow-up in a post-Undertale world, a game which Kimura has obviously played, enjoyed, and informed the creation of his latest anti-RPG. There's random encounters, and you have the option to fight, or to attempt to convince your foe to soften their heart and overcome their own suffering. When an enemy attacks, you're tasked with completing a simple, yet challenging evasion minigame depending on the foe's abilities. You're likely familiar with what this game is doing, but it's important to note that you need to approach Stray Children as if it hasn't been 30 years since Love Delic's heyday. This is a game about kindness, but it's a cruel game about kindness, one in which the player is encouraged to exude gentleness in a world that does not afford them the same courtesy. This is more Tulip than Undertale, filled with obscure objectives and blink and you'll miss them forever key items required to soothe the boss's spirit without it coming to blows. Stray Children is another game that, like Look Outside, I picked up fairly recently, so I haven't had the chance to really dig into it. Despite this, it felt remiss not to mention the latest from such a unique and influential creator. Critical reception has been pretty divisive, but being a bona fide Tulip lover, I think I can handle the spiky edges. Oh, look at this Twitter monster.
The Roottrees are dead.
We all love the detective fantasy. The snappy trench coat, the smoldering intrigue, the femme fatales. But the most underrated aspect is being a freaky little creep digging up dirt on just about anyone who crosses your path. The Roottrees Are Dead captures this fantasy perfectly as we surf the web from the comfort of a late 90s study worthy of any maladjusted shut-in. The Roottrees are an old money family who made their fortune as a candy company before expanding outwards as a multi-industry conglomerate. At the start of the game, the family's patriarch and his 3 daughters, some upwardly mobile Olsen twin plus Elizabeth types, have lost their lives in an unexpected plane crash. Apparently, it is the long-standing rule of the Roottree family that inheritance must be split between any and all living blood descendants with lineage back to the first generation, and a mysterious figure shows up at your door promising a great reward if you help untangle the line of succession. To achieve your goal, you'll primarily be searching the web for keywords and proper nouns, delving deeper into the labyrinth of information, and finally piecing everything together on your corkboard. Each time you successfully identify a handful of Roottrees, your benefactor will check in on your progress before widening the scope of your investigation. This is an absolute treat for wannabe defective detectives. Roottrees is not content to reward you with tidbits of writing, but also a surprising amount of original music written and performed by certain members of the family.
Saturday night and you're quite a sight. The world might be burning, but I'm feeling right.
Oh man, I'm glad they went through the trouble, but I really don't want to listen to this. If you're anything like me, you were probably so hyper-focused on Return of the Obra Dinn and Case of the Golden Idol that you spent an entire day playing each one end to end. The Roottrees Are Dead is a strong contender to the Inspect 'em Up genre. Silent Hill Forte. A whole decade after the cancellation of Hideo Kojima's Silent Hills, a Hideo Kojima joint starring Norman Reedus, Konami has achieved the impossible. They made a new Silent Hill game, and it ain't half bad. Silent Hill Forte was always the most enticing-looking entry in the post-2020 Silent Hill revival push, and it largely lived up to its mysterious teaser trailer. Set during the 1960s, thousands of miles away from Silent Hill, in the rural Japanese village of Ibisogaoka, high schooler Hinako just can't catch a break. Her dad is abusive, her mom ineffective, her friends are two-faced snakes, and the town is overrun by killer creatures made from kudzu and spider lilies. Now look, for a while, I thought for sure Silent Hill Forte was going to be my game of the year. And it's certainly up there, but ultimately finds itself held back by a few key missteps. I didn't like weapon durability in Silent Hill 4, so I don't like it here, and I certainly wasn't missing crafting and skill trees from my definitive Silent Hill experience. Furthermore, one never really went to Silent Hill for strong combat, something that Forte also lacks, but misunderstands its role catastrophically. The endgame is overloaded with combat arenas, where doors lock and you're forced to clear a room of foes before moving on to the next arena to do it all again. It's honestly kinda butt cheeks. The final few hours left such a sour taste in my mouth that I haven't actually jumped back in for New Game Plus yet. A sin, I know, but also an indictment of the game. Even in 2025, I'm still quite happy to complete a run of all 5 endings in Silent Hill 1 within a single weekend, but I really need a long refractory period before I follow up on the enticing plot threads dropped in Forte's initial ending. From the start of the original tetralogy, Silent Hill has spotlit women's suffering. Alessa, Mary, Heather, and Eileen all went through some incredibly heavy shit. And now we have Silent Hill Forte, a game set in 1960s Japan that you're sitting on everything. Get off the keyboard? Okay. A game that very thoughtfully and artfully critiques Japan's gender politics, starting with the good wives, wise mothers archetype that first took hold during the Meiji Restoration. It largely pulls it off from what I've seen, but I can't help but feel a little frustrated that they tasked the Higurashi guy with telling this story. I've read Higurashi, after all. Anyway, I can't fully judge this until I've seen the entire story, but I can't help but ask, you really couldn't hire a lady to write this one?
The 100-line Last Defense Academy.
If Game of the Year was most game, it would definitely be the 100-line Last Defense Academy, the big collaboration between Kodaka Kazutaka and Uchikoshi Kotaro, developed by Mediavision, respected developers of Wild, Rizzo, and Tenshi no Uta. 16 teenagers, some kinda normal, some very deranged, are whisked away to a mysterious battle academy where they're imprisoned by a morbid mascot and forced to engage in acts of violence over the course of 100 days before they're allowed to return home. Sound familiar? I am a noted enjoyer of both Danganronpa and Zero Escape, and I covered this in my Best of Next Fest back in spring, and I was pretty interested in seeing the full game. And it is really fun. What's most enthralling about both Kodaka's and Uchikoshi's respective games are that despite all of their characters are introduced as larger-than-life, absurd caricatures, each tends to go through a compelling arc. This is most expertly demonstrated in 100 Line, which, in a direct inversion of Danganronpa, doesn't kill off a character as soon as we get a peek inside their heart. What do you call a subversion of a subversion? Well, if Danganronpa deconstructs the high school ADV, 100 Line reconstructs it in the most subversive manner possible. The small numbers tactics battles encourage you to go all out, pushing your team beyond the breaking point, awarding bonuses and higher rankings the more units you sacrifice upon the battlefield. Sometimes things can get really hairy, but 100 Line is eager for the player to proceed, with the option to award modifiers and buffs if your whole team falls in combat. but there is too much of a good thing. The first playthrough, before you're able to make a single divergent choice, is a full-length game in itself. You'll play through all 100 days over the course of about 40 hours. And, you know, after a 40-hour one of these, I'm kinda good for about a year. Things got very familiar as I started navigating the timeline and ended up in a Danganronpa-esque death game, which I kinda thought we stopped doing after V3. Then I wound up in a murder mystery, where the plot comes up with increasingly convoluted reasons as to how serial murders can happen and have weight in a world where any character can be revived at any time. My issue with this arc in particular is that the timeline navigation ability is canon. Takumi, our protagonist, is aware of his ability to jump forwards and backwards in time, and is doing so in search of a happy ending. This doesn't work in a murder mystery setting, and things tend to feel a little arbitrary and stupid. For example, Takumi learns that his friend was murdered at 4 a.m. the previous night. In theory, he could just turn the clock back a few hours and lay in wait for the killer to catch them red-handed and prevent the crime, but this possibility is never considered, obviously because the plot wouldn't work if it was. When Takumi finally reaches an arc's bad ending, it's only then that he decides to roll back the clock to key decision points. It kind of takes you out of the experience, and I wish they didn't make plot contrivances for the ability and just let the player navigate the alternate scenarios as they pleased. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some pretty exciting narrative hooks in the back half of 100 Line, but I think I'm a little burnt out. I'm honestly more frustrated than enticed. I probably will eventually see everything this story has to offer, but it won't be anytime soon. Promise? Mascot Agency? We're getting pretty close to Game of the Year 2025 here with Promise Mascot Agency. This is yet another game I touched on during my Next Fest coverage, and the full game did not disappoint. I was keen to step back into the sandals of Yakuza assassin turned mascot manager Michi and gain full run of Kasamachi Island, re-establishing Promise as the best little mascot agency off the coast of Kyushu, building our rep, paying off our debts, cleaning up the streets, and generally just vibing. Promise Mascot Agency is all about getting to know the ins, outs, residents, and landmarks of Kasamachi, the most welcoming cursed islet in the Kanmon Strait. This is a paradise for not only misfit mascots, but a whole host of other colorful characters. Delinquents, twin tsundere assassins, e-girl farmers, BDSM bar mamas, and cat-loving station masters. There are few experiences more chill than firing up Promise Mascot Agency on a lazy spring evening, popping the cap off a bottle of Hitachino Nest Saison, and lazily driving around, and occasionally soaring above the highways in a modified K-truck. Alpha Chrome Yayo's hauntingly smooth soundtrack is the perfect accompaniment. I eagerly sought out all the unlockable tracks scattered across the island. I really seem to have gotten the most out of the quieter, smaller indies this year. Maybe an indictment of how crazy 2025 has been for the world. Maybe my changing tastes as my certain vintage becomes all the more pronounced. Or maybe an indictment of the inflating scope and budgets of modern mainstream video games. I guess I no longer need to deliver packages as Norman Reedus across a wide-open 4K wilderness when I can drive around a small island town with a severed pinky in my pickup. So it's by this metric that my favorite game of 2025 turns out to have almost no mechanics at all. That's right.
The nervous game of 2025 is Blippo Plus.
For as much as I don't miss expensive cable packages and by-appointment TV programming, I can state that we as a species have suffered now that channel surfing no longer exists. Staying up way too late at a friend's house, flipping back and forth to find infomercials for Viagra knockoffs, bizarre public access programs, MTV's Liquid Television, or to find the Sci-Fi Channel airing Robot Carnival for the nth time. Or maybe, on the flip side, waking up at 5 a.m. and learning that HBO has a Wizard of Oz anime in syndication. It gave a sense of exploration, discovery, and unexpected delights that largely no longer exists in this world of on-demand streaming platforms. Blippo captures this feeling with aplomb. Developed by Telefantasy Studio in collaboration with the band Yacht and developer Noble Robot, Blippo Plus is a series of transmissions from the planet Blip, whose TV satellite has unexpectedly been beamed onto our airways due to a bend in space-time. With a handful of channels at our fingertips, we're given the delightful opportunity to tap into this alien world 2-minute shows at a time, to learn that the aliens are a lot like us. They love their TV. Channels are updated weekly, and we're also given access to Femtofax, Blip's parody of the UK's Teletext or CFAX, a TV-based BBS which is more or less completely lost media now. There is also an overarching narrative here. Planet Blip soon becomes aware that we're watching them, and after tailoring a new channel to interstellar outreach, sends an exploratory team into the bend to bridge our two worlds. The results are disastrous, with only a single member of the team, Mike Zero, returning in one piece, with their mind completely scrambled. My partner and I were absolutely wrapped with what was going to happen each week, as well as catching up with our favorite shows, like Snacks Come Alive, with a completely deranged alien Julia Childs teaching us how to prepare some truly terrifying food. Brain Drain, Blip's most prominent TV scientist reviving the brains of the long dead to ask them insipid questions. Or this pretentious poet doing Twilight Zone-style monologues. Can't forget Quizzards, an outstanding parody of Nightmare. Oh, it's Chloe Coover doing Naomi Lifto, the infectiously compelling host of gossip program The Rubber Report. Clone Toi freaks me out. And the Zest Channel, the scrambled Playboy channel which airs tantric computing. There's also Blinker, a Max Headroom-esque character who breaks through the airwaves in truly punk fashion. But it soon becomes apparent that Blinker is trapped alone in some kind of TV purgatory, screaming his transmissions one way onto the airwaves. Perusing Femtofax teaches us of a grassroots protest movement for his freedom. Blippo Plus is pitch perfect in what it's emulating, as biting as it is welcoming, warm, and loving. But most delightful to me personally, nobody told me that many of my favorite entertainers ever are in this game. Is that Mitra Jahari?
Stay attuned.
Clay Tatum and Whitmer Thomas?
Confetti Cowboys!
Oh, God.
Jeez, what'd you get into last night?
Not much, really. Well, but I'll tell you what. I think I slept funny. Feels like I slept like
Brant?
this. My name is Brant.
Holy moly, the nervous stars are out tonight, folks. Blippo Plus ends with a dramatic paradigm shift and on an incredibly hopeful note. It encourages us to create and succeeds at inspiring that urge. The naysayers will tell you that Blippo Plus isn't a game. But you know what? It's more than a game. Blippo Plus is a goddamn miracle. Well, I think that's about it for 2025, folks. This year really sucked, but there's good things in the world. Here's Borscht in a little kimono. I know it's tough to stay positive at the moment, but let's walk into 2026 with kindness, grace, and looking after our loved ones. Let me know what games you enjoyed that I missed in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Oh, before I forget, my friend Denise and I have started a Like a Dragon replay podcast, Kamurocho Confidential. I'll put the link in the description. We've only just started, but we are currently playing through Yakuza 0. Maybe you'd like to join us. Hey, you haven't seen the last of me. I've got a few projects in the pipeline. I know that my videos are, as always, overdue and delayed, but I'll have Dead of the Brain 2 and a few other exciting things up for you very shortly. Thanks for sticking with me for another year. Remember to stay sassy, stay sour, and sometimes it's okay to log off. What's the big idea? Huh? What's a big idea?